Well, now that our image is ready, we can insert it into the page. I have a sample images.html file that we can use. So let me open that up in my text editor. Currently, it only contains a header. So to insert our image, let's add an img tag, short for image, just after the h1 tag. Of course, we're going to need to let the browser know what image we want shown. So for that, we use an src attribute, short for source. Our attribute is just separated from the tag name by a space, and then I'll type an equal sign, and then in quotes, we need to give it the path to the image, which in this case is just the file name. golden-gate-sm.jpg. Now the image tag is an example of one of our void tags. So after I close the quotes, I'll add a slash and then the end bracket for our tag. So it's a self-closer. And now let's just save our changes, and I'll go open the page up in the browser. And here we see the header, and right after that is our image. Now that was pretty easy, but let's go back to our HTML document and take a closer look at the source attribute. Our browser had no trouble finding the image in this case, with just the file name, but that's because it's located in the same folder, right next to the HTML file that called it. Of course, in our websites, this may not always be the case. For instance, what if we go inside the folder and we create a new folder called Images? And then I take our JPEG file and I just drag it right on in. Now when I go back out to the browser and refresh the page, you'll notice that the image is missing. And that's because the browser didn't find the image in the location that our source path said it would be. In the HTML document, the source attribute only has the image file name, and the browser will look for that file by default in the same folder that the HTML file is located in. So for our browser to find the image now, we'll need to update the source attribute value. To have the browser look for the images folder, we'll need to add that to the path. So I'll go here at the beginning and type images, and then I'll add a slash to tell the browser to look inside the folder. Now we can save that change and go back out to our browser. I'll refresh, and you can see that with the new path it finds the image again. Image tags have a few other attributes you can use to set up the image for the page. So let's go back to the document and we can try them out. The first two attributes I want to go over let you set the size of the image, and they are width and height. Let's say you want the image to appear smaller on the page. I'll just type in a width attribute after the source. Remember, our attributes can be in any order you want. Just separate them by a space. I'll add an equal sign, and then in the quotes, I'll set the value to 200 for 200 pixels. I'll save that change, and we'll go back out to the browser and take a look. When I refresh the page this time, you can see our image appears much smaller, only 200 pixels wide. And you'll also notice that with HTML5, it keeps the aspect ratio of the image, and it figures out the height for me and makes that smaller as well. Now, as I said in the last lesson, it's never really a good idea to make the user download a bigger image when we could have just resized the picture at the start and downloaded a smaller file. But as you see, it will work on your page. Now, there is actually a better reason to use the width and height attributes, even when you want to keep the image the same size it already is. Imagine that this image was located on a page with a lot of other text content, as well as other images. When the browser renders the page, it does so as the content is downloaded. Text content is usually very small, so it downloads quickly. But when an image needs to be downloaded, particularly a large one, the browser will pause the rendering of the page and wait for the image to completely download so it knows how much space the image will take up. Then it will display the image and then continue rendering the rest of the page. This can make your website appear slow to the user, especially when you have a page that contains a lot of images. So let's go back to the document. And what I'll do is use the width and height attributes to set the values to the image's original size. So I'll set the width to 500. And then after that, I'll just put in a space and add the height attribute and set that equal to 213. Now with those two attributes, when the browser downloads the HTML page, we are telling the browser how much space to reserve, and it can continue to render the rest of the page without stopping, and this will make our site appear faster for the user. This is why you'll see developers commonly use these two attributes, even when they aren't resizing the image at all. Now, another attribute that you'll want to use is the alt attribute, short for alternate text. In our earlier lessons, we've already seen that with HTML5, we include code to make our page content more accessible to all devices. So let's consider what will happen when a screen reader gets our page. A screen reader is used to read the text content on the page aloud. But when it gets to the image on our page, there's nothing to read. So it will simply get skipped. And in some cases, the user might miss some important content, which a user using a browser would get to see. I'll just add an alt tag right after the height. We'll use the equal sign, and then I'll add some quotes. And in this case, I'll make it just a description of the picture. Now, if a screen reader were to come to this image, instead of just skipping the picture, it will alternately read this text, and that way our user will know what they've missed. It's a good idea to include the alt attribute for every image you add to the page, to make sure that all your images are accessible to all your users. Now, HTML also includes a couple of other new tags to improve the way our image content gets marked up. Earlier, we saw that our text content can use section, article, and aside tags to make sure that elements are grouped properly. For images, we can use the figure tag to indicate where our images should be grouped. So I'll just add one right before our image. And of course, I need to close it right afterwards. Now this tag and its image can be included inside of any of the other text grouping tags to include the figure inside the group. Figure tags can even be used to group multiple images. And they have one additional advantage for our images when we use them. Sometimes you want your image to have a title. So inside the figure tag below the image, I'll just add a fig caption tag. Here we can give our image any title we like. I'll make it the same as the alt text. Of course, we need to close the fig caption tag as well. And now we can save our change and go out to the browser and take a look. Here you can see our image is back to the original size, and there's our caption right underneath. As you can see, the fig caption tag is really the only way you can skip the alt attribute completely, since it provides the image context to both browsers and screen readers. Well, now that we know how to add images to our text content, we're ready to try all this out in our next lesson, where we'll start our website project.